Hey guys, tonight we're rewinding to a time when military genius wasn't measured in drone strikes or nuclear codes, but in how convincingly a teenager could stare down a wild stallion and declare, "Mine." Picture this: 344 BCE, a dusty Macedonian arena. You're 12-year-old Alexander, son of King Philip II, watching nobles snicker as a black Thessalian horse named Bucephalus bucks and rears, unrideable. Your dad's about to auction the beast off as glue material when you step forward, all 4 feet 11 inches of you, and murmur, "What a pity they lack the skill, or the guts." You notice something no one else does. Bucephalus isn't vicious, he's terrified of his own shadow. So you turn him toward the sun, leap on bareback and gallop him into legend. Fast forward a decade and that same instinct, spotting weakness, then exploiting it with theatrical flair, lets you carve through the Persian Empire like a hot knife through goat cheese. Historians still argue whether Alexander's tutor Aristotle actually taught him that it's better to be feared than loved, or if the kid just made that up later to justify torching Thebes. But here's a quirky tidbit. His battle helmet had 2 plumes, not for fashion, but so enemy scouts could ID him from either side. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You don't just conquer cities at 22, you brand them. Alexandria in Egypt? That's your vanity project, complete with a library you'll never live to see finished. Your army marches 11,000 miles in 8 years, adopting Persian robes and prostrations because, hey, when in Susa. But that bloodlust has a shelf life. By India, your men mutter about monsoon dysentery and war elephants that make Bucephalus look like a pony. You weep when they refuse to march farther east, not because of exhaustion but because you'd mapped out another decade of campaigns. The mainstream fact? You never lose a battle. The fringe detail? You might have died from a fever, or a sneaky cup of poisoned wine, courtesy of your own generals. Either way, your corpse allegedly smells so sweet in death that embalmers assume it's divine. Or maybe they just doused you in Egyptian perfumes to cover the rot. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Bonus points if you comment your location and local time. Right now, it's 2:37 a.m. here, and my cat's judging me for whispering about Macedonian imperialism instead of feeding her. Hannibal's alpine nightmare, elephants, frostbite, and a mad descent into Italy, Hannibal's trek redefined hardcore logistics. You're shivering in the Alps 218 BCE, and the only thing colder than the wind slicing through your tunic is the realization that Hannibal's war elephants, yes, elephants, are struggling worse than you are. The Carthaginian general's master plan to sack Rome hinges on crossing these merciless peaks, and somehow nobody thought to ask, do African elephants even like snow? Spoiler, they don't. One minute, you're trudging uphill, boots slipping on ice, and the next, you're dodging a panicked elephant sliding backward like a hairy, oversized toboggan. Hannibal, though, unshaken. The man's 29 years old, missing an eye from a previous skirmish, and still cracking jokes about Roman senators wetting their togas at the mere idea of his approach. Historians still argue whether he lost that eye to infection or in a bar fight. Both theories fit his vibe. Here's the mainstream fact. Hannibal's alpine crossing costs him nearly half his men and most of his elephants. The quirky tidbit? He tricks local tribes by tying torches to cattle horns at night, making his army look twice as big. Ancient warfare's version of catfishing. By the time you stumble into Italy, frostbitten and starving, you've redefined hardcore. But Rome's still standing, unimpressed. 3. Julius Caesar's PR genius? How crossing the Rubicon was history's slickest career pivot, complete with coin propaganda. The Rubicon isn't much to look at, just a shallow river you could probably jump across if you took a running start. But as your sandals sink into its muddy banks in 49 BCE, the weight of what you're about to do settles on your shoulders like a too-heavy laurel wreath. On one side, your military command, your dignity, the technically legal path back to Rome as a private citizen. On the other, well, Rome itself. You, Julius Caesar, pause just long enough for your officers to start sweating. Then you grin and drop the line that'll echo for millennia. Alia iacta est. The die is cast. With that, you march south at the head of the 13th Legion, turning a political tantrum into history's most baller career gamble. Here's the thing they don't teach you in Latin class. Crossing the Rubicon wasn't some spontaneous act of rebellion. You've been planning this PR coup for years. Every battle in Gaul? Carefully documented in third-person dispatches you sent home like a Roman influencer curating their highlight reel. That time you wept over Pompey's statue? Pure theater. Even your damn coins showed you younger than you were, the ancient equivalent of using a flattering Instagram filter. Historians still argue whether you actually said "et tu, brute" when the daggers came out years later. But here's a quirky tidbit. Your final battle against Pompey's forces was so perfectly timed with a local festival that the opposing generals were literally hungover when you attacked. The mainstream fact? Your crossing sparked a civil war that ended the Republic. The fringe detail? Your troops supposedly marched so fast they outran their own supply trains and ate bread made from ground-up tree bark. For Attila's diplomatic savagery, the scourge of God extorted Rome with a smile, then burned villages for dessert. The year is 434 CE, and you're crouched in the tall grass outside the Eastern Roman Emperor's summer palace. Your fingers trace the intricate gold detailing on the diplomatic scroll in your hands, Theodosius II's latest offer of peace. You, Attila the Hun, let out a low chuckle. The Romans still think they can buy you off with bags of gold and fancy titles. How quaint. You stand abruptly, scattering the quail bones from last night's dinner. Your advisors tense as you stride toward the Roman envoys, your bearskin cloak stirring up dust. Then, just as their nervous smiles start to form, you hurl the scroll into the nearest fire. Tell your emperor, you growl, that the grass trembles where my horse treads. The envoy's faces drain of color. Perfect. What follows is a masterclass in psychological warfare. You demand tribute payments so large they bankrupt Constantinople, then generously accept slightly smaller amounts, making the Romans thank you for robbing them. When Pope Leo himself comes begging for mercy at your gates, you let him sweat for 3 days before calling off the sack of Rome. Not because you've gone soft, but because dysentery is ravaging your troops and the city's granaries are suspiciously empty. Historians still argue whether you died from a nosebleed on your wedding night or were poisoned by your new bride. The mainstream fact? Your empire disintegrated within months of your death. The quirky tidbit? Your funeral involved an entire river being temporarily diverted to bury you in its bed, then the waters were released to hide your grave forever. 5. Genghis Khan's meritocratic terror, from outcast to empire builder, his promotion system prized loyalty over bloodline, but still beheaded you. The wind howls across the Mongolian steppe as you tighten your grip on the reins, your breath fogging in the pre-dawn chill. You're 9 years old, your father just poisoned by rivals, and your tribe has abandoned your family to starve. The hunger gnawing at your belly is nothing compared to the fire in your chest, a burning certainty that one day every last one of them will kneel before you. Fast forward 2 decades, and you, Genghis Khan, are proving meritocracy works, if you don't mind rivers of blood as your HR department. Your promotion system is brutally simple. Talent rises regardless of birth. A former slave now commands 1,000 cavalry? Good. Your own cousin gets demoted for drunkenness? Even better. The message is clear, loyalty and skill are your only nobility. Your tactics rewrite the rules of war. You turn deception into high art, pretending to retreat for days until enemies grow overconfident, then pivoting to strike like a wolf pack surrounding prey. Cities that surrender get fair treatment, those that resist? You build pyramids of their noble skulls as visual aids for the next town's decision-making process. Historians still argue whether you killed 40 million people or only 30 million. The quirky tidbit? Your descendants include about 0.5% of the modern male population thanks to your enthusiastic approach to dynasty building.